All right, everybody ready?
Yeah.
I got 5 o'clock. I would like to call this November 28th, 2023 meeting of the City Council of Charleston to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Gregg, Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember Saccharin, Councilmember Mitchell, Councilmember Brady, Councilmember Gregory, Councilmember Waring, Councilmember Seekings.
Here.
Councilmember Shade, Councilmember Bowden, Councilmember Appel, Councilmember Parker, Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. Now, if you'd like to join us, Councilmember Seekings is going to lead us in an invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Heavenly Father, bless us all and keep us under your wing. May your divinity shine on us all and fill us with your grace. Allow us to feel your presence as we set about in our duties, mindful of your humble guidance. For those in need, feeling the effects of ill health, and those entangled in strife, we pray for your gentle hand of relief and recovery. Let us strive together and with your guidance to make the world a better place. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, y'all know Charleston is one of the most historic places on the planet. And we're going to reconfirm that tonight with a special recognition from NOAA and the National Weather Service. I'd like to call some city staff along with Brian Haynes, who's the meteorologist in charge at NOAA National Weather Service, Ron Morales, who's the warning coordination meteorologist, and Emily McGraw, who's also a meteorologist with NOAA, along with our city staff, Ben Almquist, who's in emergency management. Y'all come up and join me. And Dale Morris, is Dale in the house? Our resiliency folks, and Kaylin, but y'all come on up. So so this is really cool, y'all. What the year was 1738 in the city of Charleston, just one block down the street at the corner of King and Broad Street, a gentleman named John Lining, who was a scientist by training and became the first pharmacist in Charleston, began taking weather observations. And believe it or not, we've been continuously taking weather observations in the city of Charleston since 1738. And we're one of only 8 stations in the country and 234 in the world who have been doing it for over a century, just over a century. But by virtue of beginning in 1738, we're the second oldest continuing observations of weather on the planet Earth. Second oldest behind Beijing, China. Go figure, right? So I'm going to call Brian Haynes with NOAA and the National Weather Service to come forward and present us with a plaque and make some remarks. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. I have to say, this is one of the most unique awards and most exciting awards I've been able to give in my career. Again, I'm the meteorologist in charge at Charleston, South Carolina, and the city of Charleston, as Mayor Tecklenburg said, stands for years of climate dedication to science, discovery, and this is really impressive. The World Meteorological Organization, the National Weather Service, is officially recognizing the city of Charleston with the Centennial Observing Award. This award is now only 11 sites across the United States carry this distinction. The city of Charleston is unique in that observations started in 1738, as Mayor Tecklenburg said, with Mr. Lining, and those observations now have moved around a few times, but now are still being taken at the pilot boat office. If you haven't had a chance, go take a look at the pilot boat office. This is incredible. This award stands for not only years, over a century worth of observations, but a century of partnership between the city, the federal, our state partners, Charleston County Emergency Management. This is exactly why we're here. And it's really impressive to have now a century of partnership together. And not only the World Meteorological Organization, the National Weather Service, but South Carolina Department of Natural Resources has also written a letter thanking the city, everyone here for its commitment. And thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Bless.
Thank you.
All right. Move down a little bit here.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Shade.
just a little bit of tidbit of information. So Dr. Lining was once buried, his remains were once buried at what we call Ghost Island, which is that island that's sort of right off of Charlestown Landing on the other side of Asheville, Maryville. I don't know where his final resting place ended, but that was a very popular burial ground, what we call that little island. I took you there one day, as a matter of fact.
That's right.
On there, and there was some controversy whether or not the grave robbers had stolen his body. But anyhow, Dr. Lining was once next to Charlestown Landing in his final resting place.
So the plaque says downtown Charleston recognized long-term observing station by the World Meteorological Organization, September 2020, for more than 100 years of observations. I would note that we've actually been making observations for 285 years. So you think we could go ahead and get the second century as well while we're at it? That's in the mail. So I remember after Hurricane Matthew also, it was interesting because there were still at that point a few folks around that really were doubting whether the sea level was rising. And I came to find out that in addition to these observations that have been going on, that at some point they also started measuring the sea level out in Charleston Harbor. And that's been going on for over 100 years continuously as well. So I used to share with folks, it had nothing to do with politics. There weren't even any climate change, conspiracy theories yet. And we were just doing good old scientific observations. What's the level of the tide in Charleston Harbor? And of course, sure enough, over that 100 years, it's risen about 14 inches, most of which has happened in the last 30 years. But anyway, it's all part of our observing nature here. Anyway, God bless y'all.
Well, I have a question. Mr. Mayor. Where do you take the observation from?
You go to the pilot boat office,
Hmm?
and we have not only temperature, precipitation, but we have tide level as well.
This needs to be like the Stanley Cup, Mr. Mayor, where we get to take this plaque each for like a month and take it around and show people. We want to share in this. This is like amazing.
There you go.
Yes.
All right. Thank y'all. Thank you, Dylan. Appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Thank you. So y'all, I did want to welcome to the chambers this evening, a few newly, elected folks. One's our city council member elect from the new Johns Island District, Jim McBride. Thank you for being with us. And congratulations. And also our mayor-elect is with us tonight, William Cogswell. William, congratulations. And William and I met this afternoon, and we got him well on his way to his transition and setting everything up for him and his team to have a very successful transition. And as I said the other night to everyone, your success is the success of our city, the city of Charleston. So we're going to do everything possible to make that successful for you, William. Thank you for being here. All right. So next up is our public hearings. We only have 20 some odd of those this evening, 21 of them. And Mr. Morgan, I'm sure, will do his normal presentations. I will note that the first two items are ready for second reading of council.
And number 6, Mr. Mayor, too.
And number 6, if
Right.
it's a pleasure of council. Number two, we will hold to take any action on until after, at least we'll hold on third reading until after the annexation is approved in second readings. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Okay, we've got the maps up here for you. The first item also relates to the parcels and the overall development world of the second item. So we'll kind of look at these in context. This is properties at Maybank Highway and Zelasco Drive, including 3037 Maybank, 2021 Maybank, and 2021 and 2022 Zelasco Drive. 17 acres being rezoned in the city from business park to general office. This is the site of the future Johns Island Medical Center that Trident will be constructing on Johns Island. And we also have some adjoining annexations that are part of item number 2. But just to orient you here, and these will be similar slides for item number 2, but this is south of Maybank Highway. Maybank Highway is just to the north running east-west. It also backs up to Cane/Slash Road, so they will have a good bit of this corridor between those and will also create connectivity in this surrounding area. Here is our comprehensive plan, and some of this area is in our neighborhood edge designation. Some of it is also in our suburban designation. That's the parts that are closer to Cane/Slash. Some of it is also in our city center designation. So this is a development that is going to be in the right place in a location on Johns Island that, you know, meets our plans. Our request here for these existing properties in the city is from going from business park, where they were actually being planned to be medical office at the earlier point in time, to general office. And this is just a comparison of business park to GO. You all have this in your packets. And then we have just an overall aerial. These are mostly undeveloped properties. There are a few that have some residential uses, but mostly these are undeveloped. This is an image from our Johns Island community plan that shows that there are 3 designated centers for Johns Island, and the one in the middle is where these properties are located. So it's smack dab in the middle of where designated city centers are on Johns Island. This just gives you a sense of the overall medical center hospital site here. Some of these are other images that we had at Planning Commission that go in a little bit more detail about where there other hospitals are in the city. I can certainly go back to those if that's important for you all. And our Planning Commission reviewed this in October, and in October, and recommended for approval of these parcels to go from business park to general office.
So by way of presentation.
Move to
it's a-
take 1, 2, and 6
1, 2,
together.
and 6 together, and then we'll take comments from the public. If you don't
And
mind.
Mayor,
go-
while we're at it, once we've done that, if we can then move to add L1 along with it, then we can do it all as one package and not have to wait to annex to come back to number 2.
If it's the pleasure of council.
I would vote for that as well.
Okay. All right.
All right, so for
Are y'all okay taking all 4 of those items together? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Go ahead if you would with
Okay.
description of 2 and 6.
Okay, so item 2 is the properties that are going to be annexed into the city that would also be part of this medical campus. They're shown here highlighted adjacent to the business park areas that are up for rezoning. And these are properties that are currently in Charleston County unincorporated. They would come into the city under this general office designation as well. And there are more of these that actually front on Maybank as well as on Cane/Slash. So that creates the whole site here that Trident will be using for this medical center. One of these in particular is immediately adjacent to our future Griffith Park site there in the middle that the mayor is pointing to. So that creates great connectivity in this area and proximity to our park that will be in that location. And again, our comprehensive plan has these as our suburban and city center in the future land use. So again, in line with that. And here is the land use recommendation there, and aerial image of these annexed properties. And we have our planning commission, which recommended approval of these as well. And then we'll move on. I'm going to just jump ahead to the number 6, which you all wanted to look together with. And this is just a simple ordinance amendment that would allow hospitals as a permitted use in our general office zone district. General office already allows for medical uses and things like that. It just never had a designation for hospitals, and we felt like it did make sense to include that. And this has been reviewed by Planning Commission, and they did recommend approval of that as well.
All right. So we're taking items 1, 2, and 6 together. Would anyone from the public like to be heard on these items? Yes, sir. Please come forward, state your name and address.
And Mr. Mayor, is there a time limit for the speakers? Okay, the time is 2 minutes.
I'm here. Public safety has been a number one concern with the hospitals. And so I wanted to make sure that since you have an intimidation ordinance on the table, I want to make sure that my speech is clear as regards Anthony G. Bryant. And I missed your last meeting on the issue of public safety and intimidation at meetings. And so I do support the hospitals, but the hospitals do have issues with people around the hospital that may not be operating in good faith. Okay, so on October 15th, and the 16th, opinion order was done by Joe Dawson and O'Connell v. Mason, a evil-minded person against public officials. 17 federal, state, local law enforcement agencies, which will be around hospitals, regarding sex offenders, domestic violence offenders, repeat offenders, and criminal street gangs, okay, by the South Carolina Public Service Commission. We filed a complaint against DHEC about people who had real serious issues around hospitals, right? And DHEC referred said complaint to the Attorney General's office of our deep concern with the disparities in Charleston and the fact that these hospitals are consuming a lot of money people making. But then you got people in our communities who don't have any insurance, all right? So they've got all these hospitals coming in all these different places. Matter of fact, this hospital right now, $2 billion is bought. $2 billion is bought a hospital in Myrtle Beach and in Charleston. The question becomes, in Mount Pleasant, the question will become whether or not these hospitals will consume the people that are indigent, don't have no insurance at all.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard on these 4 items, really? Hearing none, it comes to council.
Second reading of 1, 2, 6,
Mr. Mayor?
E 1 to 6, and L 1.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, as I reiterated before, I say the hospital is really needed on Johns Island.
Can you pull your microphone down just a little bit?
Yes,
Thank
okay.
you.
I said the hospital is really needed on Johns Island. I said Johns Island for years and years and years since I know myself that didn't have hospitals out there. People had to come all the way to the Roper Hospital. During that time it was Old Roper, and then it came to the Roper Hospital, and then it came to the American University. And I had so many families that died because they couldn't get to a hospital because it was too far. The distance was too far. And like I always mention on council, and I think you'll hear me say this over and over again, my family go back over 350 years or more on Johns Island. I worked on Johns Island in the fields with my grandparents them long years ago, back in the 50s, you know, but I had so many families that died because the distance of getting medical help was so far away. So I'm happy to see this is coming, and this is something that is needed, not just today, but it needed years ago, but it didn't happen. But now, so it's coming now. I know it's late in the game, but it's still needed there because you got Keywa and Seabrook all the way down to the end of Johns Island, where my family lived out there near Keywa and Seabrook Island, and on River Road and Kansas Road and all those there. I have families live on each one of those roads and on Johns Island, still there. But the rural characteristic of Johns Island right now, to me, is gone. It's not rural like it was before. It's different. So we still need to have those, have the hospital there on Johns Island right now today. And this will help out a lot and could save lives in that area. And that's why I'm looking at saving lives. Thank you.
Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To follow up on Councilmember Mitchell's point, many of y'all may remember Mr. Esau Jenkins, who was a longtime stalwart civil rights worker on, Dr. King used to come and get advice from Mr. Esau Jenkins. He had a van where he would, a Volkswagen bus, that he would rush people from Johns Island downtown to the emergency room. The back half of that van is actually in the Smithsonian Museum right now. So what Councilmember Mitchell's talking about is real. I mean, to get these facilities out on Johns Island, certainly an upgrade to the community. Mr. Morgan, can you, with the property that's been assembled, about how many acres, you know, once annexed, will all of it comprise approximately?
believe it's around 55, 60
That's
acres.
great. I
I
mean,
know
but
Mr. Hillman's here and probably knows the exact number. I can't see him. Yeah.
55.
just to put that in context, I believe it was either 50 or 55 acres where St. Francis, Roper St. Francis campus is West Ashley over there. So this is a big impact for Johns Island. How far away is the urban growth boundary line?
It is a good ways out. I think I've got a broader, so on this image, you can see, the urban growth boundary is, yeah, that line the mayor's pointing to there. So it's about a mile to the south and a mile to the north. It's really in the center of Johns Island.
That's
It's
great.
quite exciting that this type of use is going right in the center.
Touche, Mr. Hellman. That's good assembly of property.
Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if that wasn't enough, I believe, Brian, you mentioned a $270 million investment at 6% on the property tax rolls. I mean, this has got to be the most significant economic investment in the history of Johns Island, in the part of the Johns Island, the city. So what does that mean? That means more resources in coming years for stormwater improvements, road improvements, other infrastructure improvements that can stay on Johns Island and help the folks on Johns Island. And on top of all that, maybe we can keep some of the traffic that would otherwise be going over that bridge that's horrible in the morning and horrible in the evening. Keep some of that traffic local on Johns Island, not just for the workers, but for the patients. I think this is just a win, 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 and I can't be more excited about this and want to welcome Trident to Johns Island. It's just awesome. Thank you.
And go back to my aerial there. Having the emergency room is really terrific, but I understand there'll be 50, 55 beds, on the. By y'all, this is the local, head of Trident Systems, Christina O. Thank you for being here and being a part of this. And I want to point out one more time, the other, image was not an aerial. The city owns this piece right here that we bought a couple of years ago. And, these are really great ponds. It's going to create a wonderful exercise pathway around the pond, plus the opportunity to kayak or canoe in the ponds. And it's just one property away, so we're going to create some park and exercise opportunities for our citizens and for your patients as well. Yeah, excellent. All right, so we're going to take E 126 and L1 together for second reading. Any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
So
Now,
moved.
third reading and ratification. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Yeah, we'll give you a round of applause on that one. Yeah. Welcome. All right, Mr. Morgan, number
sir.
3.
Okay, number 3. This is an amendment to the PUD that governs the Daniel Island Master Plan and the zoning text that exists for Daniel Island. It relates to the general office areas on Daniel Island and making provisions for other uses within those general office areas, not exceeding 8,000 square feet of combined interior and exterior gross floor area, and other retail service uses not to exceed 4,500 square feet on parcels located around a waterfront neighborhood focal park and within 360 feet of the critical line. And again, this is in the Daniel Island General Office District. In particular, it's the site that had been known in the past as the Blackballed headquarters site, the earlier Blackballed headquarters site. It doesn't relate only to that site, but that is what this is in reference to, and the efforts to create a mixed-use district in a part of that site, because that site will have offices, it'll have residential, it'll have these potential restaurant sites and other retail sites. And the staff has been very much in favor of this because we feel like it allows for more diverse uses on Daniel Island. The ordinance is in front of you. I know that the attorney, James Wilson, is here if you have questions in reference to this, but this was recommended for approval by our planning commission at their October meeting.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Please come forward. Mr. Daniel?
Yes, my name is Tony Daniel. I'm the seventh generation grandson of Robert Daniel, finally Daniel Island. I've been listening to y'all talk about roads. I question anybody's ability to provide guidance on the road if you don't know that this is a closed road. If you don't know that a road with trees and a fence and a dead end sign in it, and on Google Maps shows it's closed, how do y'all present yourself as experts to say this is how we're going to do roads and highways when you don't recognize a closed road? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm here again on the public safety question, because again, we're talking about public safety and people going around these buildings, right? And so the number one issue that was mentioned in the campaign was public safety. So when the racial disparity was done, it had only 8% of the people that were surveyed were African American, but 50% in Daniels Island, 50% West actually was surveyed. So the question is, what's their perception of people who don't look like them around buildings without having the actual exact fact regarding the observation and surveillance and arrest of people around buildings and public safety? We really got to get this racial disparity together to show that the public safety is in line with the zoning intentions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. James Wilson with Wumble Bond Dickinson here on behalf of Holder Properties, which is redeveloping the Blackbaud site. Just real briefly, we think of this as sort of updating the Daniel Island Master Plan PUD to allow a little bit more mixed use in this DIGO area, which already has, of course, the old Blackbaud office, which has been renovated. It's a wonderful new renovated building now, and residential, as well as a new park, and is being added. And the point of this amendment is to allow some more substantial restaurant and retail. And the idea is it's only around the waterfront park that's being created, and it's at least 1,000 feet away from any residential zone property. That was important to the Daniel Island Neighborhood Association, the Daniel Island Town Association, Daniel Island Company are all supportive of the amendment. Staff's been working with us to craft it just right to get everybody comfortable with it. And I think really just here to answer any questions that you may have, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, it comes to council. We have a motion as amended, correct?
Yes, sir. The amended portions on the screen in front of you, and
Okay.
council members also have it on their desk, is the reference about the 1,000 feet from properties on Daniel Island residential.
All right, this is just for first reading. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Oh, Councilmember Gregg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would like to thank Mr. Wilson for reaching out to the Daniel Island Neighborhood Association, Daniel Island Community Association, Daniel Island Town Association. That's a lot of people to talk to, as well as I see Mr. Cook over there with Holder Properties. As always, they do a great job in neighborhood outreach and making sure this was crafted just right to make everybody on Daniel Island happy, which is not an easy task. Lastly, I'll add, and I'm just gonna say this, I'm gonna use a bad word here, the D word. What caused this to be brought about was density. Density is what brought new restaurants and retail shops to Daniel Island. So as you know, as we talk about density in the future, it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it brings good things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Mr. Morgan, number 4.
Okay, and this is another ordinance amendment. This relates to, this is an ordinance amendment. The previous one was PUD amendment, excuse me, that relates to, this is an ordinance amendment that relates to the intentional demolition of structures without required approval. This was put in at request of council based on some issues that have happened in the city where people did not get required approvals for demolitions of structures. And it is gone forward through the CD committee and through the process we have for these amendments. Planning Commission has reviewed it and recommended approval, and it comes to you now.
We'll take public comments first. Anyone would like to be heard on this matter?
And Mr. Mayor, we also received one comment online. The Preservation Society supports the ordinance to add penalties for the intentional demolition of structures without required approval, but said that those responsible for unapproved demolitions should be required to face a penalty of at least 5 years of prohibition from obtaining a building permit instead of the optional 2 years. And those were all the comments we received.
All right. Please come forward, sir.
So,
Mr. Bryan.
a direct lobbyist organization comes in to make a recommendation for people that may make a mistake in demolishing something, and what will be any type of amendments here as far as giving them relief if they made a mistake, or they didn't intentionally mean to do it or whatever. Was that vetted out? Because I don't want somebody to come from another part of the state with their family to do something to their property, inherited property, whatever they have, and then this happens to them. This recommendation in terms of a direct lobbyist group, Historical Preservation Society, telling the city of Charleston to not provide relief to people if they make a mistake. That's all my concern is with that one.
Yes, sir. All right. Anyone else? Seeing none, it comes to council. We got a motion for approval. Any questions? Councilmember
Just very
Seekins.
quickly, I mean, this was born of an incident that we had where someone did intentionally and with full knowledge that they shouldn't be doing it, do something that we had no recourse. So thank you all for putting this together and getting this before us. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And so tell me in a nutshell what the penalty is.
I may refer to our legal staff for the details on that, because the ordinance actually refers you to another part of the city code.
Okay.
I'll let Magali explain that.
Good evening. So where the owner does not rebut the presumption that the demolition was intentional, they're subject to the penalties at code section 116, $500 and or up to 30 days in jail. In addition, any licensed professional who took part in the unapproved demolition is subject to having their business license revoked or suspended. Presumably for permanently.
Okay. What was the 2 versus 5 year thing that the Preservation Society mentioned?
Yes, they asked that they be required to face a penalty of at least 5 years of prohibition from obtaining a building permit instead of the optional 2 years.
Okay.
I believe that may have been a prior version that they were commenting on. The most recent version does not include that language. And instead, it gives the board discretion to deny any further approvals for a period of up to 5 years.
Okay. That's
But
more
only
better.
the Board of Architectural Review.
Okay. That's better. Councilmember Shealy.
Is there a definition of, thank you, Mr. Mayor, is there a definition of structure? I mean, is it a dwelling? I mean, is it an outbuilding? Is it a fence? I mean, is all of that considered structure, or is there a specific definition of what a structure
I
is?
believe we have a specific definition of structure within the zoning code. I don't have that before me, but we do have, we'd have to look it up.
It is defined.
Okay.
I don't think it.
I'd just hate for somebody to have a shed that they're, and cause a penalty as strict as that. If it's a dwelling, I certainly understand that, but if it's something smaller than that, I certainly wouldn't want to put penalties on somebody or have the potential of penalties put on them for something smaller.
We have a lot of historic structures in the city of Charleston. Councilmember Mitchell and then
Yeah, I think when Councilman Seekins brought this up, I think they were talking more about the dwelling and things like that, because it was a cottage on I think on the east side that someone tore down, know exactly what they were doing at the time and still tore it down, and that was one of the Freeman cottages, which was a historical factor, and that's when this first came about. But I think it was talking more about structures, houses, and if you have a historical step in front of a place, church is something, you got this brownstone step, and they come and tear it down, and knowing good and well they're not supposed to, because you have seals on your house and seals on the church, or whatever the case may be, that is historical, and they still do it anyway. So those are type things I think we were looking, if I'm not mistaken, Councilman Seekins, that's what we were looking more toward.
And I'd also reiterate that this only comes into play when there was a request for demolition approval within the preceding 5 years of the request for after the fact approval.
This is just a first reading on this one, though, is that right?
That's correct. We'll
Could
be
we
able to get an answer
clarification
for you.
For the next
Yes,
meeting?
we will
That'd be
certainly get
great.
that.
Thank you.
That'll be fine. Councilmember Appel?
Magali took the words out of my mouth. I mean, this is a very narrow ordinance that only applies in situations where somebody applies for demolition, gets denied, and does it anyways. So this doesn't even cover a situation where somebody inadvertently takes down a shed that's collapsing onto their fence or something like that in Wagner Terrace. This is a situation where somebody is designed to catch people who intentionally try to circumvent the city's demolition review after being denied by the BAR. So it's a very narrow scope here. And I mean, we're the city of Charleston. We invented historic preservation regulations like this. We can't let people run circles around us. If we're going to have these regulations on the books, we got to enforce them.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 5.
Okay, this one is also an ordinance amendment. This relates to creating clarified definitions for residential and accommodations uses within our zoning ordinance. The purpose of the ordinance is just to clarify those. We've had some recent legal issues where that came into question, so this is cleaning those up as per legal advice. And the ordinance is in front of you here, and it has been reviewed by our planning commission, and they recommended approval at their October meeting.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir. Mr. Bryan.
I want to rebut the last question. When we come here as citizens, this is the procedural process. We got notice to come here. We don't know what you're talking about until the second reading, really. So that needs to be to the public notice that this is the first reading, and therefore you're going to vet the process out until the second reading. But when you hear an indirect initiative by a direct lobbyist group to say that they're recommending an imposition on citizens who are not here, that don't know whether or not it's downtown Wagner Terrace or historic, is unfair to the overall body.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard? Yes, sir.
Apologize, Mayor. I didn't know I was going to speak 3 times tonight, but talk about enforcing the law. Well, you know what they got to do is just say that shed we built, that's not a shed. That shed's not there. What do you mean? Well, I just watched somebody that stood up and said a road with trees, a fence, a dead end sign. Google Maps says it's closed, say it's not closed. So what's to stop an individual from building a shed and saying there's no shed there? I'm just following the rules of Charleston. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, it comes to council. Motion to approve. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now we'll skip to number.
Oops,
Eight to take 8 to
21. 21
together.
for public hearing. Eight through 21 for public hearing.
Okay, number 7 is being deferred for any action, but we're going to allow the public to speak on it. So, Mr. Morgan, you want to share with us what number 7 was about?
And actually, we pulled that slide because it had been deferred before the meeting, but it's a property that's on Savannah Highway that is where a current gas station is in the Avondale area, and a gas station and an auto repair facility. It's pending annexation, but they have put a hold on that. We are just waiting for them to remove that hold, but it would come into the city as limited business.
Okay, so this was advertised, the property is 844 Savannah Highway. There's an abandoned gas station there that looks pretty junky, and we're glad they want to come into the city and build something new there. Does anybody, one from the public, want to make comments about 844 Savannah Highway? Hearing none, it's deferred, so we'll bring it back to a future council meeting. Number 8 is next.
And this is a single-family residence at 2159 Pinehurst Avenue in West Ashley. It's almost a third of an acre lot annexed in the city on September 26th and to be zoned SR1 as our surrounding designated single-family lots in this area. And you all want me to zip through these?
So if council will allow, 8 through 21 are all single-family residential properties coming into the city to get their residential zoning. But we're gonna go through them all, and then we'll shout out all the addresses. Anybody want to speak on any of them, you'll be welcome to come make comments. Yes, sir.
Okay, and move on to the next one, which is, these have all been to our planning commission. The next one is 2910 Ashley River Road, another single-family residence annexed September 26th. And this would come in the city as SR1 as well. Here's a locator map on Ashley River Road for the property. And then we will move on to the next one. Real image here. And then we have 2214 North Dollarton Circle in West Ashley. It's a 0.28 acre site, and it would come in the city as SR1, and comparable properties in the neighborhood have also come in as SR1, and you see it here on the image. And we will move along here. All right, the next one is 26 Shadow Moss Parkway. It's a little bit more than a third of an acre. It would come in the city. It was annexed in the city September 26th.
28.
Oh, 28th.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've got this down here wrong. I apologize. And it would be zoned single-family residential. And here you see an image of the most of the parcels in this area are already in the city. There are a few that are still in Charleston County. And it would be SR1. And then we've got the next one is 29 Hunters Forest Drive in West Ashley. Coming in the city is SR1. There you see on the map in front of you. And then the next one would be 44 Hunters Forest Drive in West Ashley. It's 2.29 hundredths of an acre, annexed October 10th, and it would come in as single-family residential SR1. Then we have 27 Shadow Moss Parkway, 0.41 hundredths of an acre, which would be zoned SR1 in the city. It was annexed October 10th. And to number 15, which is 1821 Mepkin Road. It's 0.18 acres, and it would come in the city as SR1. It was annexed in September, I believe, 28th there. And surrounding properties are also SR1 that are in the city. To the next one, which is 2350 Brevard Road, also 0.18 acre, and it would be single-family residential SR1. Along here. And then we have 2314 Brevard Road, annexed in September 28th and zoned single-family residential. 2869 Doncaster Drive in West Ashley. It's a third of an acre, also annexed September 28th and coming in as SR1. And we've got 1941 Green Park Avenue and annexed September 28th and also zoned single-family residential in the city. And then we have 754 Brant Road. Let's get to that one. There's 754 Brant Road, and that is a quarter of an acre, zoned SR1. It was annexed October 10th. And then we have finally 6 Apollo Road, a 19th of an acre, and it was annexed on October 10th, and it would come in the city as SR1 as well.
Great. So I'm going to call these addresses out one more time, and if anybody would like to make comments on any of these properties, please come forward. 2159 Pinehurst Avenue, 2910 Ashley River Road, 2214 North Dollarton Circle, 28 Shadow Moss Parkway, 29 Hunters Forest Drive, 44 Hunters Forest Drive, 27 Shadow Moss Parkway, 1821 Mepkin Road, 2350 Brevard Road, 2314 Brevard Road, 2869 Doncaster Drive, 1941 Green Park Avenue, 754 Brant Road, and 6 Apollo Road. Anyone like to make comments on any of those, please come forward. Yes, sir, Mr. Bryant.
I have my final comment to make on annexation and all the annexations we made from 1974 to now. This is my last time coming here. I won't be here for a while, as not as you planned me to come though. But you can see with these annexations, a seat's no longer there. It's gone. Election took place. Gone. The Department of Justice did nothing. The Department of Justice does nothing on the issue of dilution of civil rights on a land use level. It is a failed proposition completely to see our community with banking redlining, insurance redlining, leading to this, where now in 2030, it won't be enough people to look like me to seat nobody.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard on any of these? Seeing no one.
Move
it
for
comes
approval
to
number 8
council.
through 21.
A motion to approve all of them together. Any comments? I'm just going to say that Molly's doing a good job, y'all. Our annexation coordinator. All right, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up is approval of our city council minutes from October 24th.
Second.
We got a motion to approve. Any additions, deletions, corrections? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have our citizens participation period.
All right. Yes, sir. We have 6 people signed up to speak. And would you like to keep the time at 2 minutes? Okay. Anthony Bryant.
I like to smile at this. Federal Bureau of Investigations. I don't know Tracy Ellis Ross from Blackish, but I was permanently off Instagram. And with that happened, O'Connell v. Mason, an evil-minded person against public officials, and destiny might speak against Israel. Now, you can't speak against Israel. I'm a U.S. citizen. I want no harm to Israel. But when we talk to 10,000, it's about 1,000 people in October 7th, right? Now it's 20,000 human beings. I pray for everybody. My grandma told me, pray for everybody. Just don't pray for some people. So at the end of the day, now I'm humiliated, okay? As warrants at physical address by the Department of Parole Probation. That's sex offenders. That's violence against women, which is error, criminal street gangs. The causation of the problems I talk about, Mr. Mayor-elect, how are we going to, the method of applying force on folk who can't read on 3rd grade level. You got to be at the school district asking them how many of my kids can read and write and do anything. Make me that promise. You look at the statistical abstracts in the school district and you tell Cheeto Walker, hey, Cheeto, hey, he's got some mental problems. Don't use force on him. I know his mama. That's what can happen. That's what I stand for. I stand for that. I don't stand for an adverse effect to no human being. But the causation of why they behave the way they behave is an institutional question in this country for 410 years. That's what I'm here for tonight. I don't run from nothing, Buck Dunn, do none of that. Arnold M. Bryant Jr. raised a man. Senior raised a man. I love my father. He's a great man. My mother, married close to 50 years in that house.
Time.
And no harm will come to them. Believe that.
Tony Daniel.
Hey, Mayor. All right. I thought my father was going to die in April. So all the family gathered around. We have several ministers in the family, and we talked about grace. I spoke to you about grace. Well, I'm here to tell you that I forgive you for all that you have done to my family. Nothing else. Good to go. You're in your lame duck section. Fix this before you go home. It's not an open road. Your lawyer says it has to be an open road. It's not an open road. Please fix it. Thank you.
Zach Watkin. And if, come on up.
How you doing? I'm Zach Watkin. I'm the chair for the Charleston Surfrider chapter. I'm here to speak on behalf of the ordinance to amend provisions to chapter 14 of the Code of the City of Charleston by amending Article 5, environmentally acceptable packaging and products pertaining to clarifying the definition of a reusable carryout bag. I just want to keep saying that these are the greater than 4 milliliter plastic bags. We continue, I'm speaking on behalf of the 300 members of the Charleston Surfrider chapter. We continue to keep finding these bags on our cleanups. They're one of the main culprits that we find on our cleanups. So I would like to go ahead with the a ban for that, please. Thank you.
Kelly Thorkelson.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Kelly Thorkelson, South Carolina Aquarium. After witnessing a dramatic increase of threatened and endangered sea turtles being admitted into our sea turtle hospital with plastics that they had ingested in the marine environment, many of those plastics, actually most of those plastics, were that of plastic bags. The aquarium started to dedicate a tremendous amount of time and funding and effort beyond our walls to mitigate plastic pollution, including creating a litter tracker to better understand the types of the debris that are the most problematic in our community. As will be presented, or you may have in front of you the data, but litter data documented in the city of Charleston since 2016 shows that the environmentally friendly acceptable packaging and products ordinance is working. However, the loophole that allows for plastic bags that are 8 times the thickness of those that were banned is extremely problematic. Retail bags are still routinely found in litter suites within city limits, and many of these are the thicker plastic bags that are extremely harmful to water, wildlife, wild places, and ultimately to us. The aquarium supports the passage of this amendment to close this loophole. Thank you.
Mohammed Idris.
Take it easy, you know. Coming down here for 30 years, put a little screen on you. With the name of God, the merciful benefactor and the merciful redeemer. I openly bear witness that there's no God but God. And I bear witness that man cannot be God. Man can only be a servant of God, willingly or unwillingly. As I told you all the last time I was here, I pointed to the fact that the Jews are not following the law of Moses. And I told you that Saudi Arabia is not following the law of Islam because you don't have no king in Islam. All of us have the same equal right. You don't get this through no blood inheritance. And that is one of the reasons why they're having all the trouble that they're having in the Middle East. And when the countries over there saw the Jewish community, Israel, and the king of Saudi Arabia getting together, that's when the attack took place on the building in Israel. And the inhuman treatment, not an eye for an eye, 9 eye for 1 eye is taking place. We pray Allah that they get their act together. These people, the Jewish community, the Christian community, the Islamic community, these are the seeds of Abraham. They're supposed to be brothers and sisters working together for the betterment. And they should understand that freedom is marginal and the space must be shared. And all of this is about somebody trying to get a bigger profit, P-R-O-F-I-T, than another one. So the profits comes in and try to balance the budget. And I hope you all balance the budget the next years that is coming. Thank you.
Brooke Blosser.
Hello, my name is Brooke Blosser. I am the project manager for the Land, Water, and Wildlife program at the Coastal Conservation League. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for time to speak today. And I would like to thank the city for prioritizing sustainability efforts over the last several years. Today, I'm here to also speak on the first reading of the plastic ordinance. And I'm going to talk about two things in my comment today. First, I would like to give a huge shout out to the several businesses in the city that are already doing a wonderful job of following the initial rules set by the plastic ordinance, including using paper bags and other plastic alternatives as well. The second thing that I would like to say to you all is my research as a master's student at the College of Charleston focused on microplastic particles, which are microscopic pieces of plastics. And research has shown that these microscopic pieces of plastic are being found in our Charleston harbor, as well as oysters, fish, and bottlenose dolphins. Furthermore, the ordinance seeks to change language, getting rid of the thicker plastic bags, which we often see at the big box chain stores. This ordinance would only impact about 2% of businesses in the Charleston area and eliminate a large amount of plastic that we are still seeing littered in our marshes. Thus, it will also reduce the number of microplastics emitted. And so in support of our local businesses, our natural resources, and our Charleston population, I hope that you all are in support, like I am, of the amendment to the ordinance. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, those were all of the speakers that we had signed up on our list. We did receive 10 comments in support of the ordinance clarifying the definition of a reusable carryout bag. We also received some comments from Mr. Bryant and Mr. Daniel, and those were forwarded in full to council prior to the meeting.
Great. Did we miss anyone? Did anyone else want to be heard? Well, thank you all for being with us tonight and for sharing your comments with us. We appreciate it so much. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up is petitions and communications. We have an appointment to the Citizens Police Advisory Council. It lists my name, but it actually came from Paul Tamburino, the chairman of the advisory committee.
Move for approval.
Thank you. Any questions on David? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now, since my submittal to you about Mr. Scarden, he has since let me know that he does not intend to serve another term on the Charleston Housing Authority. And he mentioned in his resignation letter a suggestion that our former council member, Carol Jackson, would be interested in serving if it's a pleasure of the council. Now, I didn't advertise that in the agenda, so we would have to take that up at next week's meeting. But I do want to let y'all know that that request is out there for Councilmember Jackson. Okay, Planning Commission, we have Mr. Bart Jackson. He would be a new appointment, replacing Ms. Johnson, who was from Daniel Island and was holding our designated real estate seat. Mr. Jackson is a longtime resident of Daniel Island and is an appraiser of residential real estate. So he's in the business as well. So we ask for your approval for Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Mayor, if we could go back to the Housing Authority, how many vacancies do they have on the board? Is it just one?
It's at this point, just the one. Yes, sir.
And the term is for 4 years?
That's my understanding.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Can I entertain a motion on Mr. Jackson? Okay. Councilmember Mitchell, did you want to be recognized? Councilmember Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we know geographically, again, we've talked about this before, we've kind of talked about it, but so you said Daniel Island. So how many members from Daniel Island do we have on the Planning Commission? Is this the only one? Okay.
So Ms. Johnson was the only member from, excuse me, from Daniel Island, Cainhoy area of the city. This would, in an attempt to actually keep the planning commission as geographically diverse as we can, keep someone from that area of the city on the board.
Okay, thank you.
It's not prescribed that this member be from
Correct.
Daniel Island, but, she was the only person from Daniel
From that,
Island on
yeah.
there. We just thought we'd, solicit someone who would be willing and eligible from that part of the city. All right, any other discussion, questions? All in favor of Mr. Jackson, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, if we could take all four code enforcement officer
for approval.
appointments
Second.
together. They're all staff, mostly fire marshals, and they're all qualified. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have a request from Councilmember Shade for the Planning Department to give a brief update on Sumar Street. Mr. Summerfield is ready to do that. Mr. Shade, did you have any comments beforehand?
Sorry.
All right.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the latest update, really since last month when I updated you all, is that as a part of the budget that has been presented by BFRC and the mayor to council that you all will take up next week, there is money included in there to do the staffing analysis that Councilman Gregg had requested as a part of that motion, so we can understand really what is the potential need, so we can make sure that we would right size any civic space or office space that would be proposed as a part of the Sumar thing. So ideally, that budget gets adopted. That money is then available. We get the study done, hopefully early Q1 next year, and then we will have that data that we can then come back to you with more data-driven analysis. If you recall, last time I reminded everybody that when we did the program for Sumar, that was based on we wanted to do a mix of civic use and commercial use. And so we didn't do that based on a specific analysis or need for spaces. We identified some departments that we knew could fill that space, could provide direct service to West Ashley. And so that was how we had come up with those calculations in the original proposal. It wasn't based off a specific city growth projection and staffing space need.
All right. Any further question or comment? Councilmember Waring.
Can you tell me how much we have budgeted for this study?
I think it was 100,000.
I believe it was 100,000.
100,000. Thank you, sir.
All right.
And real estate will be handling that analysis.
All right. Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, after we receive this money and you commission this study, are you going to commission a study like we did the commission of the Plan West Ashley, or how do we plan on commissioning this study?
So at that dollar volume, you'll have to do an RFP. So we'll have to put an RFP out. So a normal procurement solicitation process to see qualified firms that can do that analysis for us. Bring back the folks that come in. They'll go through a selection committee. We'll get the vendor, then they'll do the work. We'll get the report, and we'll use that report to modify the plans as appropriate to bring back that option to council as motions.
If I may interject, that's more about the procurement. The scope of the work is simply a real estate and growth analysis of our city staff. And so it's nothing like Plan West Ashley. It's more like an internal analysis of what our current and projected needs would be, say, over a 10-year period of time.
Correct. I'm sorry. That's not a planning firm that will be doing that work. That would be
space study.
Space study, yeah. HR analysis of growth trends, things like that.
Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to confirm, we have already funded this and approved this?
You have not.
Okay,
It is
not yet.
it is
Thank
part
you.
of the recommended budget based on what the request was.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Councilmember Waring.
That's everybody else is in. I've already spoken, but I do have another question.
Anyone else like to speak? Back to you, Councilmember Waring.
Do we have budgeted, maybe this is a question for Ms. Wharton, do we have budgeted the 600,000+ for landmark? Did they send the invoice in, or where are they on that? Are we prepared to take care of that in 24 budget?
We do have that money reserved.
Thank you.
All right. So, no further questions. We'll move on to our, council committee reports. First up is Committee on Recreation. Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Committee on Recreation met last week on Monday, November 20th at 4 p.m. And the first item of business that we had was we had a discussion and a vote to name the park property that's on Wapu Road. It sits between Capri Isle and Edgewater Park along the Stono River there. We voted to name that WPAL Radio Park. The park previously was that WPAL radio station. It was a very important media outlet through the years. In fact, it was extremely important during Hurricane Hugo, because from what I understand, it was maybe the only media outlet that was able to get some information out during Hugo and directly after that. So it's a very important part of our West Ashley and Charleston history. And we also voted to have the picnic shelter that's going to be on site there, named after Bill Saunders, who was the owner of WPAL radio station from 1972 to 1998, and the dock to be named after Mrs. Pearl Washington Grant as well. So I'd like to bring that to council as a motion to approve for council, if we could, please.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
So out of clarity, I don't recall us actually using the specific word radio in the name. It was WPAL Park. Is that okay with everyone? You can name it whatever you want, but my recollection of the discussion, it was, we're going to call it WPAL Park.
I'm okay with that. That's fine.
I guess it could go either way, but there was a community-based group that Donna Jacobs and a number of women and men that met for a number of years, and they came up, had radio in the name, so.
It did?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just think the record would reflect from our committee meeting, we just said WPAL.
Yeah, I wasn't
If
at
you-
the committee
Y'all
meeting.
want to call it WPAL radio? I'm all for it. Yeah. Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
I'm okay either way.
Leave radio in it? You want to leave radio in it? That's fine. That's the motion. WPAL Radio Park. Okay. I think we had the motion already, and we had a second.
It's in your district. I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's
Councilmember
probably in
Parker.
Councilman Appel or Brady. It's right on the line there.
Okay. Let me get one meeting here. Councilmember Parker?
I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that was my question, just whose district? I'm gonna leave it up to y'all. Y'all know. Speak up.
Okay. All right. The motion says WPAL radio, but also with remembrance to Mr. Saunders and Miss Grant as well as a component of the park's naming. All right. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We also had a discussion on Stephen Washington Park. Councilmember Parker talked about the neighborhood park, and Mr. Kronsberg mentioned that there was a great meeting with several community members, including the mayor of the town of James Island. They talked about desires of improving the park regarding the ball field and improving drainage, opening up the property, clearing some underbrush, putting in a potential picnic shelter, and a rearrangement of parking. There's a cemetery on the property, and Clemson University's historic preservation class is taking it on for their class this semester. And they're already, from what I understand, participating in doing some ground penetration radar work, seeing what headstones are available and taking inventory of what is there. There'll be a cost estimate put together and a concept, and come back to a small subcommittee in January to review kind of the big picture of what they need to do with that property. But Councilmember Parker mentioned that the park is such an important part of James Island's history, and she's excited that they're working together with the town of James Island. So we also had a good discussion on the parks bond referendum, and the committee was just very thankful to everyone who worked so hard to help push that parks bond referendum through. Our constituency was very clear in their vote that we need to move forward with our parks. And we'll have further discussions within our committee on when funding will be available, what we can do in the meantime, and we'll be discussing in future meetings how to prioritize as well. So that completes my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments on that report? Councilmember Mitchell?
Mr. Mayor, Council, this is not a question on the report, but this is a question pertaining to, I would like to get some update on what's going to happen to Martin Park. You know, we mentioned that it's not going to, it wasn't a part of the referendum, but we was going to do some other things, I think out of the tip, I guess, whatever the money.
That's right. We have funding available.
Right,
for
so I
Martin
want to know
Park
when we,
through-
when we gonna just kind of brief that up and give some information on that, because once this other thing start getting into place, then they're gonna be asking me, how about this area here on the east side? So I need to get a briefing on that so I can go back to the community and let them know what's happening with Martin Park, when it's gonna happen, because like I said, these particular housing gonna be completed pretty soon. So far as the James Lewis complex with everything going on there, and the Humanities Foundation with the senior housing going there. And we still have this outdated parcel there, that park there is outdated. That's obsolete, but there since, I don't know, must be like 100 years, I guess. But it's obsolete, so you have to have this state-of-the-art park there so people can come and go to those parks and have senior citizens going there and have things going on in that particular park. So I just want to get an update on when we might be starting something, or what kind of plan we have for it. This was going on now for a couple of years now.
Mr. Kronsberg, can you come back at our next meeting, or do you want to offer anything right now? Do y'all mind?
We can next week, doesn't it?
We'll come back to the next meeting and give you an update.
Be fine.
I'll just tell you briefly, we have some money set aside, and I think we're proceeding with master planning of the renovation of the park, aside from the park referendum. So we'll come back to you next meeting on that. All right, so next committee up is our Committee on Public Works and Utilities. Actually, Councilmember Shade conducted that meeting yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I pitch hit for Councilmember Waring. And we had our meeting yesterday afternoon at 5 o'clock. Not to mention, may have been one of the shortest meetings we had with Public Works and Utilities, but no coincidence that I was running it at all. The first thing that we voted on was the acceptance and dedication of right-of-ways for Hayes Park. That got approved unanimously. And I would make that motion that we approve those right-of-ways as well.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
We got an update from Mr. O'Brien on our environmental services, and if any of y'all have not received the plethora of emails we got about trash pickup, the schedule, and for Christmas tree pickup, that's already been discussed. So very good updates from on our schedule for the holiday season, from Thanksgiving and for the Christmas, New Year's as well, and for the Christmas tree pickup. The other item that we voted on was, which is already before us, the Ways and Means Committee, was this increase of our contract from $500 to up to $750,000 for the brick arch upfit. So that got approved unanimously as well. Then Mr. Fountain, if you don't mind just giving us a repeat of the discussion we had on 3 different items concerning the city floodplain ordinance. And Mr. Fountain's going to give us a little more detail than I can, but one of the items dealt with, as opposed to a 5-year improvements as to either improvements or construction on from a 5-year cumulative to a 1-year cumulative aspect, which is really important when it comes to stormwater damage or hurricane damage, as to the threshold as to making those improvements and fitting that category. So he'll explain it to you a little bit better, more articulately than I can, but it's really quite an improvement from reducing it from a 5-year to a 1-year standard. Also elevation issues that came up, and I forgot the third one, but I'll let you, let you just handle all 3 of those at one time, if you don't mind.
Certainly, Councilman Shade. So we did discuss three primary updates to the floodplain ordinance, one of which, as was mentioned,
was a consideration for a shift from a, so let me back up and make this a little cleaner. We currently are required by the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, if we want to be eligible for our citizens to purchase flood insurance through that federally backed insurance program, we have to comply with a series of base requirements, and then we are able to add additional requirements which create community rating system points, which are used to provide additional insurance discounts to our residents when they purchase those federally backed policies. So the city currently has a 20% rate reduction, insurance rate reduction for all of its citizens by having a Class 6 rating. In order to do all those things, of course, we then have our floodplain ordinance. We're talking about some updates to that ordinance at the committee. What the reason we're talking about it at all is that one of the items we need to update, which is the machinery and equipment freeboard calculations. So when you're building a new structure, you have a finished floor elevation that's required to be at least base flood elevation in order for people to be part of the National Flood Insurance Program. That's basically looking at a 100-year floodplain map and saying how high is flooding expected to come in a 100-year storm event or a 1% annual exceedance probability event. The city has 2 feet of freeboard above that. Freeboard is basically additional feet of requirement before you can build that finished floor. Generally now there's a prereq for basically 1 foot for almost any insurance discount, because FEMA has realized that there's obviously the chance for error on these maps, since these maps only go to a 1 foot interval. They're not down to like the 10th of a foot. There's also concern, of course, for increasing storm intensity. So the city has a 2 foot requirement for new residential construction, new commercial construction, or substantial improvement of a commercial structure. For substantial improvement or substantial damage of a residential structure, it's a 1 foot requirement. So the change in, sorry, it's a lot of things to say verbally, I know. The change in the prerequisites for insurance discounts, FEMA has said that we need to better clarify what we already do as a policy, that your machinery and equipment for your building are also required to be at those same freeboard elevations as the finished floor. That's generally like the HVAC unit that you see on a pedestal outside, or venting, like ventilation ducts or other ductwork underneath the structure. These requirements, again, they don't like retroactively apply to existing structures when you pass them, unless you trigger certain requirements like a substantial improvement or substantial damage, which we'll talk about in a second. But they do apply for new construction. They do apply for this situation we'll talk about with substantial improvement, substantial damage. So again, we already regulate this way. This is our policy, but FEMA wants to see a cleaner tie in the ordinance of that machinery and equipment to that freeboard requirement, just as you would your finished floor, because obviously that's the elevation you want to have things not be damaged at. In order to get more than a 5% insurance discount, you basically have to have that requirement. So we need to update the ordinance if we want to keep our insurance discount, to make it very clear that's how we currently regulate, which I think should not be a big challenge. While we're doing an ordinance change, we have 2 other items that we wanted to propose. One of which is talking about the substantial improvement, substantial damage. There's another NFIP requirement that if your structure has 50% of the value of the structure, not your property and the building, but just the building, if there's a 50% either damage or improvements you've made, or some combination of damage and improvements you've made, you basically have to bring that structure into compliance with current regulation. So that obviously can be a significant challenge on older properties that were built before floodplain existed. So that frequently that involves elevating your home, like raising your home, which the challenges that we've talked about for slab on grade homes, that's very difficult. Often that ends up being basically a demolition and a reconstruction of the home. You can elevate anything, but it gets very expensive. So currently, the city has a 5-year cumulative calculation for that substantial improvement, substantial damage determination. So if you come in for a permit, or if you have damage from an event, it doesn't have to be a natural disaster. It can be any damage from any event that requires a permit to repair. you have to look back 5 years worth of any permits or work or damage that have been done to your property and add all of that together to see if you have triggered that requirement. That's something the NFIP is very supportive of because they want to see these repeat insurance claim properties get brought up to no longer be repeat insurance claim properties. However, the minimum requirement realistically from FEMA, from the National Flood Insurance Program, is to have a mechanism that prevents people from basically splitting their improvements or their repairs into multiple projects to avoid a requirement. So we're recommending we reduce from a 5-year cumulative, which does get you a little bit of point calculation towards those insurance discounts, but not very much for the impact. We're recommending reducing it to a 12-month or a 1-year cumulative look. The reason we're doing this is that as we've had recurring storm events over the last few years, last decade almost now, what will sometimes happen is you'll get a new owner who has purchased a home. It does not necessarily understand the consequences of a previous owner having done a significant set of improvement or remodeling projects in order to sell the home. Then if you have a disaster occur and say you need a new roof, you might trigger that substantial improvement, substantial damage, and be in a situation where you might need to elevate your home, not because of your damage, but because perhaps a previous owner had done quite a bit of upfit work, and the permits are there, it's all public record, but that's a lot of expertise and knowledge for people who are trying to purchase a home to have that understanding. So if we were to drop to the 1 year, which is what our recommendation would be, and we're not voting tonight, we're just having this discussion at the Public Works Utilities Committee about bringing forth recommended ordinances, getting the input from the committee members. We would lose a few points from a CRS perspective, but not enough points to damage our current insurance discount rating. It's not a high value category. They don't expect it to apply to a lot of homes. We just have a lot of homes in the floodplain in Charleston because of the nature of our city. So that's a recommendation that we'll have. We think there's a lot of value to not basically almost catching people in an unintentional trap. Like that's not what the purpose of that is. The purpose is to say, if you're making major improvements on your home to the point where you're spending more than 50% of the value of the structure, let's consider basically elevating it or demolishing it or doing something that will make it flood safe in the future. It's not meant to be if you get a roof damage from a wind vent or something, you have to go and suddenly elevate your home. I think that's a poor stance for us. And we've realized a lot of that as we've gone through the life experience of having that regulation in place. The third item gets a little more technical, but also I think it's a little more straightforward, as crazy as that sounds. When you're talking about the floodplain regulations, they get really intense. So, because it's all federal origin. The way the NFIP works, there's a variance process for historic properties where if the work you would do to make the property compliant or to meet requirements for like new work on your property, if you install new HVAC system, you did something, would damage the historic integrity of the property, like it would make it no longer be historic. There's a way to variance out and do something lesser to preserve that historic nature. And there's a whole series of ways that can happen. And we could talk about it if anyone has any questions. But currently, in order to qualify as a historic property, you either have to be on the National Historic Register, listed individually on the Historic Register, or have been determined by the State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO, to be a property. There is an option under the federal regulations to make a local determination as well if you have basically a proper historic preservation group and you have a process. So we're asking for the flexibility to consider the flexibility in the ordinance to be able to make those local designations. It doesn't obligate us to do it. It just makes that as a potential route. So those were the three changes we're looking at. We are recommending at the same time, and I think it was supported by the Public Works Utilities Committee, that we actually just kind of scrap the actual format of our ordinance and rewrite it to match more what the current model ordinances are from federal and state level. So it's easier for regulators to basically see that we have done what you're supposed to do. It's cleaning up some of the definitions, but there aren't substantive regulatory changes from that. It's just the formatting of the ordinance. So at this point, we intend to draft that ordinance, reach out to some stakeholder groups, make sure we're getting input from different interest groups on what those changes would be and what the impacts would be, and then come back to council probably in January or February with a draft of that ordinance and some input from those groups.
Right.
Sorry, I know that was a long discussion, but it's complicated.
So what Matt is really saying that this is very helpful on our credits our national floodplain, policies. And what it really is going to do is be much more fairer to homeowners, particularly from reducing the 5-year cumulative to the 1-year cumulative. Because if you buy a house or a piece of property and you are unaware of what improvements were done beforehand, and you come in as an unaware buyer, then you could be tagged with those improvements. This way, within a 12-month period, you get a better, clearer or understanding as to what improvements may or may not have done by a previous owner, and you're not being penalized for making improvements to your structure. And that's the other important part of this, your structure, not just to the dirt, but to the structure. If you've made other improvements outside of that 12-month period. So this is much more user-friendly, I think, overall. And when it came to the historic designation, it just seemed to make sense that we're very much on the forefront of historic designation and defining historic structures, that you can use a local government, which is us, as opposed to something state or federal designation to qualify for that category. So this seems like really common sense stuff that we're making adjustments to. And this is all just for information purposes only. It wasn't for any, we did not vote on any of it, but we had deferred this from our previous Public Works Committee because we got overwhelmed with the other discussions. And so you can imagine going through this yesterday was pretty heady stuff. So I appreciate Matt's trying to simplify this to a level we can all understand it. That's my report, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, council member. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Waring?
I just want to call, I guess, maybe raise the flag of caution to any council person that has houses on slab in their district, because this really affects those houses. Get to know this well. If you have a house in a district that, I don't know, Hurricane Hugo came back and took the roof off and created 50% damage, those people are going to be hustling to get the roof back. But on the current situation, they'd have to raise their houses and come in compliance, which means they're going to have to move. So some of the newer areas, like over in Daniel Island, those houses are already built up off the ground. But older areas, and in particular, inner West Ashley, well, maybe outer West Ashley too, Canterbury Woods and all that, I think they've got some. So anyway,
yep.
I think we need to get acclimated to it. We'll have more time to do it, but thanks, Mr. Fountain, for all you're doing to explain this to all of us.
Councilmember Parker and then Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, I would just ask that, we do have areas, very sensitive areas like that on James Island. So I would like to see for sure what the impact would be to those individuals in those neighborhoods that we know have flooded, may flood, will flood in the future. So if that can sort of be added to the presentation as well, I think that would be extremely beneficial, because it certainly will affect neighborhoods in my area.
Thank you. Councilmember Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fountain, so if I understand the machinery and equipment allowance, I mean, what would trigger on a residential structure, you'd have to have a significant loss to require the house to be elevated. So to Councilman Waring's point, I mean, there are a lot of houses, I think, if I'm doing the math right, on Daniel Island, where the machinery and equipment allowance plus the 2 foot of freeboard would require those houses to be raised too. So I don't think it's just West Ashley.
So just for clarification, the machinery equipment just means that basically the HVAC systems, the ductwork has to be installed at the same elevation as that finished floor requirement, rather than being able to come in lower. So it would only apply if you were installing new machinery or equipment. You always have to install new devices to the current regulation, or you would have to bring a home into compliance if you had a substantial improvement, substantial damage. If the only thing out of compliance was your machinery equipment, it would just be putting in a taller platform, for instance, for your HVAC system. But yes, it can certainly spiral depending on what it is.
So just to give you an example from my own house, my ductwork is, my finished floor elevation is 1 foot above I got the 1 foot freeboard because my house was built in 2003. All of my ductwork is in my crawl space. There's no way to elevate that anymore, so the house would have to be elevated, if I understand it correctly.
So typically ductwork, there's two options. One will either go into the attic. That's the more traditional way on new construction that ductwork's put in the attic to avoid that situation. Certainly also have on grade, generally your ductwork's in the attic. If you can't do the attic, you can also basically install the ductwork in a manner that isn't damaged by flooding. So you can make it where it's flood safe. It's normally an encapsulation and a dehumidification approach.
That sounds expensive. But anyway. I just want to make it clear to everybody. It's not just West Ashley and James Island. I mean, there are new houses on Daniel Island that this would apply to too. So. No, we're talking about
So it is the way we
modification.
currently regulate. It's not clear enough in the ordinance that FEMA feels comfortable with that showing the prereq, but it is the way that we've been regulating for years and years for new construction and for new permitting work.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions?
Last thing, I
Councilman
think,
Waring.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did adopt, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you hit the 50% threshold, the homeowner can get an appraisal on the property to verify that 50%, because our building inspection may have 50% based on, I don't know what, market values. And I think it's important to have it based on market values.
That's right. All right, so more to come on that when we actually bring the ordinance back to you in first quarter of next year. All right, next up is our Committee on Traffic and Transportation. Councilmember Brady will
Yes.
cover.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Seekings had to dart to a neighborhood association meeting, so he asked me to come in from the bullpen to give this report. So the maintenance agreement, first thing we talked about was the maintenance agreement between the South Carolina DOT and the city of Charleston. It relates to the sidewalks as part of the Maybank Highway Woodland Shores Complete Streets project. That was passed unanimously by the committee. Then we took up traffic calming. We took Gammon Street in Carolina Bay, my neighborhood first. That was passed unanimously. And then we took up the Fenwick Drive in Old Windermere. And that item was deferred. And the meeting lasted 13 minutes. And that's my report.
All right. Councilmember Appel.
What was the reason for the deferral?
There was concern, even though that it met the requirements, that the average speed on Fenwick and the length of Fenwick didn't necessarily warrant a traffic calming device.
This is the one block section between Folly and what's the main? Wesley Drive, right.
And I would move for its adoption.
All right. We need a motion on that report. I think.
For the maintenance agreement.
Okay, we got a motion. Any discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, our Committee on Ways and Means. Got a motion to approve. And was one of the items amended or not? That was somewhere else. Okay. Any discussion on Ways and Means? All in favor, please say aye.
It was as amended for the police department school resource officer agreement to indicate 2023 and 2024.
Right. Thought there was some. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. So next we have bills up for second reading. 8 has since been deferred. And so we'll be taking up 1 through 7 and 9 through 14. We have a motion to approve 1 through 7 and 9 through 14 and a second. Any discussion on any of those items? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification. I have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Just make it official. Can I entertain a motion to defer number 8?
Second.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now, we do today have 2 bills up for first reading. First is a zoning on a property, the Tomato Growers Inc. property.
I would move that approval.
71
Second.
Brownwood Road. We got a motion and a second. Any discussion on this one?
And I can say, so this is near the intersection between Brownswood and River Road. I met with the team that is doing that. It's going to be similar use. So this is just to make the zoning so that it fits what the current use is. So it's not going to be any type of upzoning or anything of that regarding how it's currently used.
Terrific. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is an amendment that was recommended by our Sustainability Committee. And, we've got Katie McCain here, maybe to answer any questions, or Mallory. But maybe we don't have any questions about it. Do we have any questions on this item? Hearing none, all in favor, please. Oh, Councilmember Gregg.
I'm gonna vote against this, but I would like to just explain why. I think that we have a history of passing regulations, things that make us feel better. And often we don't predict the unintended consequences of those things. We passed the plastic bag ordinance. The unintended consequence was now these businesses created thicker plastic bags that now we're dealing with that. We don't know what the unintended consequences of this are gonna be. It could be that Walmart has to hire another employee or Home Depot has to hire another employee to go deal with what sorts of bags they purchase. Ultimately, it's going to cost money. We know that. I did a little bit of research. The United States as a whole, we contribute less than 0.2% to the plastic in the world's ocean, less than 0.2%. That's obviously not a very big number. This might make us feel good, but ultimately I think it does very little, and it makes it harder for businesses to do business in the city of Charleston. If Home Depot, they're allowed to have different bags in Somerville, which discharges, if a bag falls off of a truck in Somerville, it's going to ultimately end up in the same waterway as the bag from the Home Depot in West Ashley. You can't tell me that this is going to make a big difference in the amount of plastic bags that ultimately end up in our waterways. I think we're creating patchwork regulations that make it more difficult for people to do business in the city of Charleston. Therefore, I will vote against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. McCain, I would like to recognize Ms. McCain, who reports out from the Sustainability Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to quickly note that at our last meeting, we talked about how the ban is working. We have data to show that it's working, which is great, right? We should celebrate that. That's what we hoped when we passed it 5 years ago. We also have data to show that the loophole for the extra thick plastic bags is causing unintended consequences. So as a data-driven city, we can use this data to help make more informed decisions. We actually are hearing from businesses, our local businesses, that are asking us, why don't we fix this loophole? Because they're like, I'm the local business, I'm using paper. Why are we letting the big box stores get away with this loophole? So we're getting requests from businesses to fix this. And in the meantime, the data shows that when we are doing litter pickups, we're actually picking up more of the extra thick plastic bags now than we are the thin ones. So that's good. The thin ones are going down, but it's bad that the thick ones are going up. And the thick ones aren't being used in areas that don't have the regulations in place, such as Somerville. They're being used in the Charleston region. So this tonight is an opportunity to fix that loophole. It's very simple, straightforward. This loophole is really being taken advantage of by 5 businesses. I can count them on my hand. I have some bags here. It's Walmart, it's Lowe's, it's Target, it's Trader Joe's, and it is Total Wine. And you can see that these businesses, they already have alternatives available literally in their stores. So we've built in a 6-month grace period just to give them some time to get rid of that extra stock. We will continue to work with them to help get them in compliance. And we've been in contact with them for years, asking them to fix this, and they haven't. So now this is a chance for government to take action. I'm here if you have any questions.
Great. Councilmember Bowden.
To Councilmember Gregg's point, evading our ordinance is not a good reason to not fix our ordinance. And that's exactly what happened here. We put rules in place. The deepest pockets spent money to evade our rules and continue improving their bottom line at the cost to us. I did a quick Google search. As of July 2023, Walmart had $13.88 billion in cash on hand. I think they're fine. You know, with all due respect, I think we heard some fantastic public comments, maybe the best I've heard since I've been on council about this issue tonight. It's such a clear and present danger. It does more than just make us feel good. It is addressing a particular issue affecting our particular environment. And with all the other threats that are out there to our marshes and all the protections that our marshes provide to us, it just couldn't be more clear that we have to take this step tonight. So, you know, with all due respect to the Walmarts of the world, hire an extra employee if you got to.
We actually talked with Walmart, thanks to Councilmember Shilly, and they are neutral on this.
Good. Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I remember the debate and discussion we had on passing the plastic ban ordinance initially. And a little history that this started in the Low Country with the Olive Palms, when some families out there, some moms actually, went out there and as they were cleaning the beaches, saw this proliferation of plastic bags and the harm it was causing. And so it sort of snowballed after that, and the city was sort of late in the game of getting to that point. And the same arguments were being made that you're making tonight about, you know, what impact this has on, but it does have a positive impact. So the state was considering doing this ban, and I think that got sideways very quickly. And there's a lot of pushback on a statewide ban on this. So it's left up to local governments to do this. So as we close these loopholes, maybe other municipalities and other counties will jump in on the bandwagon and seeing the benefit of all this. Since we're not going to do it on a statewide level, at least we can do it on a regional level. And we are surrounded by waterways, creeks, tidal creeks, rivers. And it does have an impact on our wildlife. And a recent study was done, I think, with the contamination of crabs, which I like to eat crabs, by the way. So that they become into a level of pollution that we can't enjoy them anymore. And this is the Low Country. So our relationship with our water, our relationship with our seafood is critical as an identity of who we are. And anything that we can do to help protect that, even if it's a small impact, it really has a large impact on doing that. So this is more than just, I think, a feel-good measure. This is really some positive impact of moving forward. I would like to see this council pass this unanimously. And those of you who have some reservations about it, I'd ask you to reconsider that and send a very clear message to the community and to our neighboring governments. This is a good thing. Help us be part of a partner with it. Don't resist it. We need to have this kind of uniform environmental consciousness throughout our region. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that James Island wholeheartedly supports this. So thank you. Thank you, Katie. And District 1, just do it for the turtles, okay?
But Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. McCain told you that I got her in contact with Walmart, or got Walmart in contact with her. I will tell you, I was against this from the beginning when we first started talking about this, for the same exact reasons that Councilman Gregg was saying. After talking with Walmart, and they said they were not going to oppose this, I said, well, certainly if they're not supporting or opposing. They're neutral, as Ms. McCain said. And I said, well, certainly if you're not opposing it, then I certainly wouldn't. So I will vote for this tonight for those reasons.
If I may add a comment, did anyone else have a comment? Councilmember Ware?
I actually like those bags. I use them sometimes. With that said, if you ever do a background tour of the Turtle Hospital over at the aquarium, Plaxis is just a no-no, you know. So I'm voting along with the turtles and the people on James Island.
So Councilmember Gregg, if I may share I think a new piece of information that I found out recently that bothered me. I was at a little symposium over at the Citadel, and there was a biologist there, and they were talking about microplastics, and I had never thought about this, but he shared, and this relates also to ponds in addition to open waters, that microplastics provide I think the scientific word is substrate, but a place for bacteria to grow and fester. And the real concern in our own local environment is with oysters. And the more microplastics that are in our estuaries, the more chance they're going to be, they will be filtered by oysters. But if that's creating a place for bacteria to grow and foster, you know, that increases the likelihood that you really need to overcook your oysters. And frankly, I am not for that. So, so that's a new consideration. I would just share wonderful comments that Jane Goodall made when she was at the Gilliard not long ago. To think big, act small. This is maybe acting small, but start somewhere, right? And we've already started down the journey, so this might be start somewhere else, but it's okay to do small things that have a small impact if we're all in this together. So any other comments or questions? Did you want to?
Mr. Mayor, one quick question. One quick question and then a follow-up. Who's going to enforce this ordinance? So, and what is the enforcement mechanism?
Well,
are we going to have somebody patrolling Home Depots and Walmarts?
Great question.
All right.
So we have an ordinance in place already that bans the single-use plastics. This is just fixing a loophole that's allowing these extra thick ones. And our ordinance already is being enforced by the Livability Department. They enforce it just like the no smoking law. So we don't go out and look in everyone's kitchen to see if people are smoking. But if somebody reports it, then we go investigate it. And we actually have a great portal online where folks can actually spend 2 minutes just telling us the location they think might be in violation. That automates a work order to Livability, and then they go check into it to see if it's in violation, and they can issue warnings or fines as needed. So the process is actually working really well.
Noted. Thank you very much. Last thing I'll say is I love sea turtles. Second to last thing. Lastly, I mean, these businesses that you mentioned, they have every incentive in the world to try to be green and try to get rid of their plastic waste. They know they're under the microscope. There's a reason they haven't done it yet. So that's all I'll say. Thank you very much.
Comments? We'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. He likes his oysters really cooked well, I take it. Yeah. Is there any additional business come before us this evening, y'all? The next meeting is going to be next week, next Tuesday, December 5th, right back here at 5 o'clock. We stand adjourned.